Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bekah, this is Bekah's Bookshelves, and today's video is part 2 of my August wrap up. I hadn't originally planned to do it in 2 parts, but I realised in the middle of filming the last one that it was going to be quite a long video, so I broke it down into 2. And so I've only got 5 books to tell you about, so hopefully this will be quite quick. Right, so the first book I want to tell you about is an audiobook that I never planned to listen to. I'd never heard of it. I didn't particularly seek it out. I was just looking for something easy and fun and light to listen to whilst I did some work. And I came across Sucks to Be Me by Kristen Painter. This is a kind of paranormal chick lit type thing. Basically we've got a middle-aged lady whose husband has died. He was part of the mafia, and just after he has had his funeral, she's in the cemetery and she gets attacked and bitten by a vampire. And so she then discovers that vampires are real and all the other like kind of supernatural beings, you know, werewolves and fairies and pixies and whatever else. And it's like a kind of, it's a bit comical. There's probably going to be a romance in there at some point, but yeah, it's just super fun. And it's about her kind of getting to grips with the fact that she's a vampire and the kind of powers she has, the benefits of it, you know, the challenges. It's nothing that stands out, but yeah, it was good fun, and I rated it 4 stars. It's part of a series and I will probably listen to the rest of the series at some point, but it's not something I would particularly like, that's it, I'm going to listen to it this month, you know. It's not that kind of book. And then the next one is Dead Man's Hand. This is an anthology of Western horror stories. I think that's what you'd class it as. If anybody's doing the Pop Sugar reading challenge this year, you'll know that there's a prompt on there that's read a Western book, and I had no interest in Westerns whatsoever, so I was specifically looking for a book that would be like a horror or a zombie but in the West, that would kind of satisfy me but then also satisfy the prompt. And I came across this one, and I rated it 2 stars. What I've proved to myself is that, yeah, Westerns just aren't for me at all in the slightest, because I stretched it as far as I could and still didn't enjoy it. There was like one story in the anthology that I kind of enjoyed, but not enough for me to remember it, so I can't tell you anything about it. It was all like kind of stories of like horror or supernatural beings. So in fact, I think there was possibly even aliens in one of them. But it was all kind of set as a Western back in time, so it was a historical Western but with a sci-fi horror element. And yeah, I didn't enjoy it at all, but I wouldn't have known that until I tried, so there we go. The next book was a NetGalley audio arc, and it was called Underprivileged Overachiever by Yohonse Salimu. I think I've pronounced his surname right. This was like a classic underdog type story, where somebody has got no prospects and you would never imagine them turning out to be successful, but you know, he did. And when we're saying that this guy was underprivileged, it's like a whole new level. This lad grew up in his teens with a mum who had mental health problems. He grew up in an area where there was quite widespread poverty. There was gangs, gang warfare, drugs, and he was never even provided the basics. He would go hungry to allow his younger siblings to eat. They never knew when they were going to get the next meal. The mum couldn't provide for them, but they kind of stayed under the radar from, you know, social services or child protection, whatever you want to call it. And in fact, at one point he was completely homeless, and he was like living, I think he stayed in school a couple of times. He lived on the streets. There were various places he would crash at people's houses. And basically this was a lad where you would have said there's no chance, like he's just got no chance of making anything of himself, yet he did. He was, you know, incredibly intelligent, and instead of allowing his situation to drag him down, he fought against it like every step of the way. It didn't matter if he was doing his homework by torchlight under a bridge. It didn't matter if the only meal he got was at training when he was playing sports at school. He was determined to make a good life for himself, and then obviously for his family, and he did it. He really did. And I think it's just one of those where it's not an enjoyable book to read, but it's eye-opening and sort of is enjoyable, if that makes sense. Like, it was interesting and I enjoyed seeing how he ended up turning out, but it was not very nice to read that people are going through this situation. And the second NetGalley audio arc that I listened to this month was Athena's Choice by Adam Boostrom. Right, this is set in a dystopian future where all males have been wiped out completely by some kind of deadly virus that swept across the globe years previous to this, this story. It's one of those books where you have to suspend your belief, kind of, I don't know. You know, like, you've just got to put things to the back of your mind where you're kind of thinking, this doesn't sound right. Because we have a young girl called Athena. She's an artist. She's got a housemate, another girl, obviously, and everything's fine. One day she's woken up by the police, and they tell her that she's been arrested as part of an investigation where some very important files have been stolen with regards to the virus that wiped out the men. It turns out that she wasn't supposed to have been arrested, really. It was due to the fact that the police had been told by this kind of all-knowing AI type character that Athena was the only person who could solve the case, and they'd assumed that meant that she was involved in the case. She's not. She's no idea what's going on. She's got zero connection. You know, she's as clueless as the reader at that point. And this is where you've got to kind of put things on hold that you're thinking don't sound right. And that's because even though she seems to have no connection at all to everything, and you're like, why would this random girl just be chosen to help an investigation into this, you know, it's quite a serious crime. And the police do take her along interviewing people and investigating, and you're like, no, that doesn't sound right. But when you get to the end of the story, or towards the end, it's all explained and it makes complete sense. It just leaves you a bit confused in the middle. So she's kind of part of this investigation where long buried secrets are uncovered, and people who are involved in it all start being murdered or they die suspiciously. Her life is threatened. There's an attempt on her life, and it's this very sci-fi futuristic setting, and yeah, it was good. I felt like it could have been a little better. I'm not sure what was missing. I don't know what it was. It was a little bit like a thriller, but set in a dystopian future. And I gave it 4 stars, and I wasn't sure exactly what could have happened to make it better. I just didn't love it, but I did really enjoy it. And the last book that I'm going to tell you about is Secrets of a Serial Killer by Rosie Walker. I had very, very, very high hopes of this book, and it was just a little disappointing. I rated it 3 stars, and I'll tell you why. So Zoe is a teenage girl, like late teens, and one night she's out with her friends and she gets abducted. There's similar kind of circumstances around her abduction and several previous abductions over a number of years. There's kind of conspiracy theories online about a serial killer in the area that the police aren't acknowledging. But what makes it a bit more bizarre is that this serial killer has been, if they exist, they have been killing for longer than would kind of be able to, like biologically, like age-wise and physical abilities. So there's then obviously conspiracy theories about whether this serial killer trained somebody else to kill and take over, or copycat killers. And so there's some characters who are going down that route with what they think has happened to Zoe. Then there's the police who, and Zoe's dad, who think that this is a straightforward abduction, or that she's kind of, I don't know, maybe run away or something like that. And so the investigation goes on. Now, this book is told from several different characters' perspectives. It's told from the mums, it's told from Zoe, it's told from the killer, and then it's told from, I think it's a couple of other children that end up tied in somewhere. And what kind of did it for me is that because the story is told from so many perspectives, you sort of lose that intensity in the story, and you lose a bit of the connection with the victim. So you don't get that kind of scared thriller type feeling because you're not as connected and you're not as invested in that story. And another thing I thought that wasn't quite right, or it hadn't done to its potential, is that just as something was happening, so just as Zoe is about to be tortured, and you kind of building up and you feel that anticipation and like, oh my God, it then stops, goes to a different person's perspective, and that person can be doing something mundane, or just talking on the phone or something, and it's kind of like you go, oh, and it just like loses that kind of thriller aspect of the thriller book. Overall, the kind of the underlying storyline of who's done what and why, brilliant. I just think it wasn't quite executed in the right way. It had so much more potential, and I just felt a little bit disappointed. So yeah, 3 stars. And that is all the books over the last video and this video that I read in August. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all soon. Bye.